Okay, that's recording. So before we start, just want to make sure that you understand what you read here about confidentiality. So anything that you say will be anonymized when we do the analysis. And at any point during this chat, if you feel like you want to stand up and leave, you can do so without having to give a reason. And also, if there's anything that you want to amend after the interview, or you want to take back, or you want to add, you can also do that.
All right, thanks.
And I'll be taking notes, as I mentioned. If you have the right to have a look at what I'm writing, ask what I'm writing.
Wow, so transparent. Sounds fun.
So, I know you've had a look at the 4 questions. As I said, they are guiding questions. How about we just start with telling me why you responded to this recruitment flyer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it was the flyer that sounded approachable and that a chance you could share your experience as an international student, and I felt like I had something to say about that because I think really there was this expectation of when I came to HKU, and I think this question kind of got me back to that original of why I came here. So, and I think that's an important one. So I responded because 1, I'm a research student. Like I also know it's hard to get people to respond, and 2, because it reminded me of that early experience when I was living in Hong Kong for that intense year. Right now I'm kind of I live abroad, right. But anyway, that's why I responded.
So what were the reasons why you came to HKU?
Yeah, I wanted to make a career move in Asia Pacific.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was living in Europe and wanted to move to this region. So getting a PhD was one way, and at HKU, it's one way to get a foothold in the wider Asia Pacific region. So I came here as a career move and really a career transition. I had already been working for almost a decade and intensively. So I was ready to learn and expand and grow as a professional. So HKU was that chance to grow and expand as a professional.
Right.
And I needed a foothold to do that in a new region. And
so you mentioned a career transition. You also said grow and expand. How true are those statements now, a year later? Yeah,
I think definitely more than a year later. I mean, this was several years later, since 2014. So from 2014 till now, I think it's really amazing to see growth and expansion over that time. If you had asked me 1 or 2 years ago while I was living in Hong Kong, I might not have been able to see, because I was suffering, in terms of just the change of living here and studying here was really a big challenge for me. So I wouldn't have been able to see growth and expansion. I would have felt like I was really suffering in a career transition type mind sense. Yeah. So I really feel like a lot has changed, particularly as I look when I moved to Bangkok and looking back at my life in Hong Kong. I really feel like this is where I grow and this is where I expand in terms of my own intellectual development.
Okay, sounds really positive.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot in that response. First of all, can we talk a little bit about that change that you said was, you used the word suffering?
Yeah, I don't want to be too dramatic, but I think when you're a career professional, like I was an established professional, so I had a quite good reputation in my network in Europe and in the United States. So I'm an established person in my small field, in my small way. And then to come here and to feel like you have to start over was a very humbling, feeling. So suffering was thinking that you're a good professional and that you can contribute immediately, to realizing that you have to stop trying to contribute and just listen and learn first, and then really go through a really meaningful, humbling process to be like, what is it here that I can learn, rather than just integrate my knowledge immediately. I could integrate my experience as a professional later, but not at the beginning. So that was really a hard lesson to learn.
And what were some, what helped you see that lesson?
Yeah, I think mentoring. I think the people that you work with here help you see that. So one of my mentoring experiences was difficult because it made me to feel like my experience wasn't respected, and that humbling experience becomes a humiliating experience, and not a positive experience, because you want to feel like you have valuable perspective to contribute, right?
And you didn't feel like
I didn't feel like that at some points where my experience was not taken seriously. I was basically kind of treated as like everyone else. Right. And I think that's hard. And then I had a very good mentoring experience that did validate what I was trying to contribute and then give me space to grow. And that was key. A mentor giving me space to grow.
Validation.
Mm-hmm.
Mentor. So you were the mentee?
Yes,
right.
I was receiving good mentoring.
So what is the situation now?
It's ideal. Now I'm at this point where I've already gone through this period of struggle, and I feel like I'm at a point where I can see what I've been going through and see my own mistakes, but also see how all these people, even the people that I was struggling with, they also were trying to help me in their way. So I also see very positively how they were trying to contribute the way that they were, helping me get on track. So from outside and this kind of coming to the end of my PhD, I feel like incredibly positive about the struggle.
So positive about the struggle because it's helped you grow, and but during the struggle, what sort of obstacles, apart from having maybe an unideal mentor, what other obstacles did you face?
One practical one was that I had a family with young children, so I did not have housing for my family. Financial stress because of that, magnifies the problem. Mm-hmm. So you want to follow the rules, you want to do everything right, but at the same time, the system isn't built for you. You're a mid-career, like I've already worked, so I didn't have that basic material support and respect that I had a family.
So what do you mean by you didn't have the basic support and respect?
Like housing. Like in Hong Kong, that's not, people would say we have family housing, but no children are allowed.
Okay.
How bizarre is that?
That's
a policy from
HKU?
CDRs. Yeah, HKU. Anyway, but as a student, if you want to attract me, like I work with international organizations, like I had good professional background and experience, but they couldn't accommodate the fact that I had small children in this faculty. So it's like, how can we be a world-class faculty if we cannot attract and accommodate people that are mid-career, that have families and a life before it?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's clear. But.
So what happened in the end with housing?
I moved. I left.
Outside of HKU?
I mean, I basically left my family in Bangkok and then started to have to fly out whenever I possibly could. But I was separated from my family for a year, and then every chance I had and every resource I had, I would fly back home. But I was forced to live by myself and separate from my small son, and there was no way around it financially. So we just split as a family, and then that makes me
Cool.
have to split my life, right?
Yeah. So I'm assuming with this you had a lot of communication with housing staff or admin.
I know that's separate from our faculty, and Cedars did everything they could. But the system does not accommodate mid-career professionals with small kids. It just is not designed for that.
So it's either you're single or you don't live at HKU.
Yeah, there's one-track PhD. There's a one-track full-time PhD student, and it means this is your stipend, this is your situation, sit here at the desk and do it.
Right.
But there's not respect for the fact that you're a working professional, that you have experience, and that we can use that. And the fact that you have a family, okay, we'll work with that too. There's not respect for that. I mean, even though people want to respect that,
right,
they do it quietly. They respect you and support you quietly, but the system itself is working against you and making you suffer as a result.
In your communications with the relevant people, how were your concerns received?
With sympathy. I mean, everyone personally understood. So people want to help you everywhere I turned, whether it's the institution or at faculty level. I'm the search for resources. You get letters of support. You get people quietly coaching you about how to approach the problem. Everyone was very accommodating. But the end of the day, I'm kind of left outside the system. I had to find my own way through, but the system was not able to kind of make space for me as a mid-career professional.
Right.
So. Yeah.
Okay. Would you say that when you brought this issue up, that it was dealt with quickly, efficiently, or not really?
No, I think it was dealt with. When you ask the question, people they dealt with it to the maximum of their potential, and I thought it was dealt with efficiently and quickly.
Okay, I asked that because we have a lot of people talking from single people, married people with spouses overseas, and talk about the inefficiency of admin. Have you had experiences like that?
Yeah, it's a good point to remind me of, because people complain about procedure in general, but I find the process does work, and it does take some forms, which is inefficient because you're filling a form and getting a signature. I understand that point, but it also for me wasn't the main issue. I mean, I felt like, yeah, people were doing their best and they were efficient within the bounds that they had.
Right.
I think people get overly critical sometimes of the efficiency question.
Okay. Well, apart from housing, what other obstacles did you face when you first arrived, or that helped or didn't help your career transition?
Yeah, the housing was the most specific.
And the financial stress you mentioned.
And the financial stress, and then the mentoring situation was kind of ongoing.
Was the financial stress specifically about housing only, or
just taking care of a family at the same time?
And was that ever raised with staff?
Yeah. So I was willing to take on additional work and teach and whatever I could do to raise more money, but there was no immediate way for me to earn more money. So then I'm forced basically to look for opportunities outside, and then just do so quietly and respectfully, but not break the rules, but definitely push the bounds of what is acceptable for a full-time student. But consulting on short-term projects, things like that, just to try to make ends meet for your in the near term when I was there for that 1 year.
Yeah. So, sorry, you were here for a year and then you moved to Bangkok.
Yeah. So basically, I've just been using I used all of my non-study leave and study leave. Non-study leaves, you don't get the PGS, so I just turned off PGS so I could go work. Mm-hmm. So then I could make a lot more money in a short time, but I couldn't make progress on my PhD. That's a compromise. And then when I picked back up, I had used all my study leave. Anything I could do to be based in Bangkok, basically, is what I've had to do.
Is that because of housing?
Primarily housing, and yeah.
Wow.
That's probably the main issue. And if there were, if I could get financial support, then I would be here full time with my family for sure, and I would be doing better research, and I would be a better asset for the university. But now, because I don't have that support, I'm devoting my capacities as a professional to another organization in Bangkok, right? Like now I'm a visiting scholar at Mahidol University. I work closely with UNESCO. You shouldn't say UNESCO, but an international organization, because there's only one, maybe two. But anyway, so those relationships, like all my time is there, and like that's a loss for HKU.
Right.
Because I feel like I have a lot to contribute to master's students or other PhD students.
But you're unable to.
Yeah, but I'm not able to be a part of the regular community because, it's just, I find a better community of support where I am in Bangkok. And then intellectually I come here and I get mentoring. But the community of support is better in Bangkok.
In your opinion, what are some of the things that would help you build that sense of community at HKU?
Yeah. I don't know how to make that happen, actually. Because it comes from the students as well, and I hope people reflect on that and stop blaming faculty all the time. There's a lot of tendencies here to blame administration or to blame faculty. And I think that students also need to take more responsibility. So I hope that message comes across loud and clear, that students don't take responsibility. They sometimes hide from responsibility and creating the community that they want. Very few step up and do it. Right. Most of them are passive, and my colleagues are, of my peer students, a lot of them are passive, and they look for someone to solve their problem.
That's an interesting point, because I raised the issue of community because it's kind of been a trend in previous interviews. But it's interesting to hear someone say that actually you think about the participant, the interviewee's point of view. It's not always the admin or... that's a good point. Okay. In terms of expectations before coming to HKU, actually, what were they met?
Not on this community piece, actually.
Right.
I expected, this sounds silly, but to be able to drink beers and argue. But that for me was like a dream of a good PhD.
Right, yeah.
To have a beer and argue a lot about things we care about.
Right.
And there's very little of that, actually, of like just everyone relaxing and arguing about things that matter.
Right. Is this an issue of personalities, or is this an issue of opportunity? Is there very little interaction between, or what is?
Yeah, it's hard to say what creates that community, right? But I find it could be the way the offices are set up. It could be the way faculty want their students to sit quietly. It could be all of these expectations that make community fractured. But that's what it comes across as. Is I'm not sure where it comes, because if there's too many, it's hard to say how you can get a culture that is open and critical at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know the key.
Yeah.
I don't have the key, but I have it in a few key people that are definitely willing to criticize and be positive as they do so, constructive criticism.
Okay. Even though you don't live here anymore, of your interactions with people within your colleagues or people within your cohort, whatever you want to call it, would you say they are mostly local people, international people, mainland Chinese, or?
It's really well mixed. Like most of my closest friends, I feel like are from Hong Kong and mainland.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how is that?
For me, it's been really positive. I feel like I have a better perspective and understanding of China, actually, because I feel like some of my mainland friends are like when I go to lunch, that's who I'm with. My friends from mainland.
And they speak to you in
only in English. Yeah. And that's just because of my office. I had the lucky break to have a smaller office at first. Maybe this is a good point. Smaller office, 4 or 5 people. Then it was working like there was a community, people were sharing, there were books passed, there was a feeling like, let's go to lunch, do you want to come to lunch?
Right.
And then it was super fun and super easy. So when I arrived, I was like texting people, and 6 people responded, quickly. So that's great. That's it.
So maybe the key for you, what worked for you, was the smaller size.
Now that I kind of pieced it together, that was definitely helpful. But the bigger office, because I moved offices, the anonymity of it, the distance of it, you can lose that community very easily.
So office structure seems like it plays a role in your
I think you're
experience.
right. I think office structure and the way we use space.
Layout, space.
Yeah, because I used to be in this building where we are now, but on the 4th floor, I think, where there's a bunch of offices all together.
Right.
And then I could only get like 2 or 3 people, really. Maybe it was working, but it didn't feel like a community. It felt like a quiet space.
Right.
And my new office was not only a quiet space, but also a community space. Meaning that people were sharing food and laughing and going to lunch together.
And would you say that sort of community feel contributes to the quality of your research?
It's everything. I mean, for me, that was... Yeah, the quality of your thinking, the perspectives, and sharing. Like one of my closest colleagues works in artificial intelligence, and because I was in that office space and because he's willing to share, then I learned more about artificial intelligence. I mean, very concretely, and that interests me from like a lot of perspectives, but particularly, I just wouldn't have been able to access some of the literature without his kind of, hey, ignore this and do that, kind of mentality.
Right. It sounds like a really that dynamic really works for you, and
that's really essential.
Some of the things that I found it quite interesting that most of your closest friends are from Hong Kong and mainland.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you're aware of like the political tensions in Hong Kong, especially between Hong Kong local people and mainland Chinese people. And so one of the things that we're finding are trends in socializing behaviors. And I think you're the first international student with Hong Kong friends and mainland friends, and speak about it in such a positive way.
Yeah. I think there's also that habit of complaining about it too.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I think I have 2 Hong Kong friends, and then like maybe 5 or 6 like of the people that I was writing, just a handful of them mainland. But I think, so let's see, just yesterday, someone from UK, Vietnam, Malaysia, those are the first 3 that responded. And then I just got back from coffee with my friend from mainland. She's just become faculty member here. And yeah, And then 2 of my other friends are not here that are from mainland, but they also wrote back.
Right.
But I would say the Hong Kong community and the mainland community are critical of each other. So they're 2 different friendship circles.
Right.
So I acknowledge that it's not easy for everyone. People want to criticize mainland students. Oh, they're closed off, or this or that. And I think that's one. It's just not true. I think it's just takes time and the right way to get in to be part of a community. Whether that's through eating, 12 o'clock, go to lunch. That's one way. To be friends with my mainland students is to get
be punctual.
Yeah, be punctual on lunch.
Right.
And just join.
Yeah.
But I would say my Hong Kong friends, my couple of Hong Kong friends that are in that inner circle, they don't meet up with my mainland friends as often, which is a bit sad.
Yeah. So do you think that there is a tendency for people to be to come to blame, or what do Hong Kong people blame? Like what I'm trying to get at is what is the actual root of this hostility as an outsider?
Mm-hmm. There's something about perpetuating these big ideas. I don't think it's their own personal experience. I mean, some of it's their personal experience, but a lot of it's just perpetuating like what they heard, and then it becomes true. I don't know if that's too abstract, but you know what I mean? Where some people just kind of get in the habit of saying bad things rather than experiencing the people that are right in front of them, or maybe they had one bad experience and that affirmed what they heard, that affirmed what I was expecting. And then they stopped trying. And I heard the same things. Like I had people tell me that this is what I would experience, when I was coming. And they're like, oh, they were warning me about the way mainland students would work. And it's a habit in the international students as well. They warn each other, and it's not going to work, and oh, what is this crazy, leaving food everywhere, or, you know what I mean? Like people are actively warning each other about the differences. Instead of like accommodating differences and being like, oh, I also was clumsy,
Right. Interesting. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that before about the difference between warning and accommodating differences. Interesting that you used the word warn.
Yeah. There's something about that. Like, this isn't going to work. This. Be aware. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Why do you think people do that?
Yeah, I think they're frustrated. Honestly, people here in some cases are just deeply frustrated. Yeah. I don't know. Is that an overstatement? Deeply frustrated. I mean, they're struggling maybe like I was struggling, but they are frustrated. People are frustrated with bureaucracy, or they're frustrated with I think the source of it in that sense is just like frustrated with their workmates,
Yeah. Okay, well, moving away from Hong Kong mainland tensions, what are some? Can you identify? I'm not saying you have any. I'm just if you have any structural
issues.
Yes.
You mean? I'm joking. What do you mean? Structural issues? Can you give me an example?
Systematic issues that. I mean, I guess you mentioned housing.
Okay. So one thing I have a problem with as an international student is travel, like study. Is this relevant to your needs?
Yes.
Okay. So when I need to use study leave, I find that almost embarrassing to have to get a form signed for permission to go to a conference or for whatever.
Right.
It's to the point where I can do my best to get the right number of approvals, but it's just not feasible to do it all the time.
Right.
I could be more explicit if you want, but
if you want,
it really has to be anonymous.
Yeah.
So I'm invited to a lot of events, actually. So 10 countries this year, different events. 10. So they would be able to identify me with that. So just be careful. That's important because it gives me legitimacy as a professional and it connects HKU. But I can't use that HKU profile because I know it's not what they want here. It doesn't fit the one-track sit at your desk model in some sense. So I'm a visiting, this is interesting. So I'm a visiting scholar at Mahidol University because I can give them credit wherever I travel and am invited. Whenever I need to use an alternative profile to be invited, then I can use my visiting scholarship at somewhere else. So instead of using like this keynote lecture as affiliated with HKU, I'm using a keynote lecture affiliated with another university because they've invited me. They said, Wes, wow, you're really good. Don't use my name again.
Yeah, I promise. This is all anonymous. I haven't written your name anywhere here.
I'm joking, but I just said it, so.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I'm transparent. I don't want people to feel, get paranoid about their names coming up.
No, because there is this. That's actually part of the culture. Is that you risk going outside the bounds. So even the interview, you risk going outside the bounds, and that can make me look unethical. And I don't want that. Like I want to do a good job, but at the same time, I'm in a situation where I have a family and I'm being invited, and I can do more actually than this faculty will allow me to do. So I have a mentor who understands that, and many people here quietly understand that. But does that fit the profile of the institute? I would say not. That's not what the program is designed to do. They want me to stay in the bubble, and in this bubble, I don't fit.
So you're discouraged to affiliate yourself with HKU when you go to these conferences?
I think it would take too many approvals and too much justification for me to bother with it. Whereas a very flexible institution like Mahidol would love me to publish, would love me to travel, would love me to do this and this and this and that and that, and I can do one announcement of this is what I think is going to be good, and they will be gladly supporting because they get good visibility. Right. So there's a sense of trust that, wow, this is going to be great for us. Please. But when I'm invited here, it's like, I feel like I'm outside the bounds. And so I think HKU misses out on a lot of that because I'm an abnormal PhD student, maybe.
Right. So
as a professional, like as someone with mid-career experience.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't quite follow the order.
No, these are just guiding questions. I'm just thinking we have a little bit.
If that's enough, then
we've got 10 minutes. But is there anything else you'd like to say? As I mentioned, we hope that this research does inform policies or best practices as to how to make the international student experience more smooth.
I think one message is to continue trusting your faculty and administrators.
Okay.
They know the limitations of the rules and the limitations of the policy, and that's just the reality of HKU. But I think if we continue to trust the judgment of professors and advisors and mentors, then we're going to be in good shape. That's a way through this, I found, is like, try your best, to stay with, what we have to do to stay within the bounds of HKU and the rules. But I find it incredibly inspiring when you find the right mentor, the right relationship that will accommodate your who you are.
Right.
And I think if we continue to trust and give responsibility and not try to rules and regulate to death of this, but just stay with the mentoring relationship as much as we can, we're going to be great. We're going to continue to do good things. But we have to give the flexibility and the responsibility to faculty.
Flexibility and responsibility. Okay. Well, great. Do you have any questions before we finish?
Yeah. What do you think this will look like as a final product? Is this like a
I'm not too sure. I know that as we progress, the PI is getting more and more ideas on how we can branch, how different other research questions can branch out of this. We're also thinking of interviewing faculty, so not just students.
Yeah.
And then we are also we're paying close attention to the Hong Kong and mainland dynamic.
Yeah, it's an important one. That's a huge percentage of the faculty for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not too sure if there are any other intentions set in stone yet.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting conversation. I think it's an incredibly important one. And I wouldn't let the negative overwhelm the positive because there are incredible opportunities here, and it's just a matter of being, getting the right mindset,
right,
how to accommodate what's here and how to find your way through. But it's here. It works.
That's a really good point. I find some some of the interviewees are so, the negativity has consumed them.
Oh,
it's
yes.
almost like they can't get past it, but they have so much frustration.
Frustration is a theme.
Yeah, frustration for sure, and frustration in different aspects.
Yes.
Housing, finance, like.
It's just like, it's a reality. That is a reality. But I think it's immaturity as well, if you want to try to hit on that point. Some of it is just normal frustration of dealing with big systems. And
right.
I mean, we can do better. Like HKU has to do better, actually. It has to improve. But, I mean, there's also an element of, we're dealing with a generation that is, maybe needs more support, more student services, more support in the right way, more listening, less. It's hard to say what the answer is. I wouldn't want to give the answer, but for me, it's the immaturity factor is also part of it.
Yeah.
Wherever you go to work, you're going to have to learn to deal with some of the things that people are frustrated with.
Right. One last question on language. Is language an issue for you here?
No, it's hard because I feel like I should be learning more Putonghua or Cantonese, right? So for me, language is my responsibility. I should be learning more, but I've never had like a feeling that people were, pushing me out because I used English or something like that. Like I was trying to accommodate the fact that at lunch maybe I don't understand everything, but that's actually what I wanted as well as part of my own experiences, to be a part of this region. And part of this region is very many languages, not only Putonghua, but...
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.